Yeah, he will.
I forgot, though, yeah, they did send a new one, right?
Yeah. It's like top secret.
Good evening and welcome to the Litchfield Budget Committee meeting of Thursday, May 25th, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, and we have Chair John David Sun is on the WebEx tonight. I am your Vice Chair, Kate Stevens, and I'll be running the meeting tonight if the board so pleases. But to begin, I'd like to entertain a motion to allow remote participation for Mr. Sun. I have a motion?
Second.
Second? Motion by Ms. Douglas, second by Mr. Leary. We are going to roll call vote tonight. Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Cutter? Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
You can't vote.
Oh, that's right. All right.
We're voting to allow him to vote.
Motion. Right, motion passes 800 or 801? 801, all right. You will
It'd be
abstain.
funny if you voted against it.
And if you could please state whether you are alone in the room and your reason for remote, please.
Yes. I am remote in the room, and I'm remote because I'm in Kentucky visiting family.
Fabulous. Okay. And then, do we need a motion for myself to chair
No,
the meeting? No, we're just
You're
okay?
automatic.
All right. Okay. Let's start with review and additions to agenda. Does anybody have any additions to our agenda tonight?
Actually, I have one thing.
Yep.
'Cause I noticed that on the last couple, there's no place where it stated for committees.
Okay.
So we just kind of like sometimes randomly talk about them, but it should be like a slot in here. I mean, there's a whole bunch of committees and
I guess we usually cover that over
Member
member input. We can start adding a line to committees.
that way we won't miss them.
All right, I will add that in. And moving on, let's open it up for public input. Seeing nobody in the room, I will close public input. And I will go through our correspondence for the past month. I'm going to read through it since Mr. Sun is remote. On April 20th, Chairman Sun shared the link to the Budget Committee portal. April 21st, bookkeeper Snayman provided the March 2023 town budget reports, special fund balances and revenues. April 23rd, IT manager Brunel forwarded information on the joint chair meeting between the committee and the school board's chairs and vice chairs on May 18th. April 23rd, recording secretary Mr. Sullivan shared the April 20th draft meeting minutes. April 26th, Mr. Brunel notified the committee of the new wireless network in Town Hall. April 27th, Town Administrator Kleiner shared an internal work order form to be used when requesting assistance from town staff. May 1st, Mr. Sun clarified the May 18th meeting was for committee and board leaderships to discuss the budgeting process for the upcoming budget season. May 10th, Mr. Brunel reshared the new wireless network information at Town Hall. On May 15th, Mrs. Kleiner notified the committee that former Chief Sergeant is no longer with the police department and all police administrative matters should be directed to Interim Police Administrator French. And May 19th, Mr. Sun shared the May 25th, 2023 meeting agenda. And then if anything came in after that, we will add that to the next meeting's correspondence. Review and acceptance of minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
I have a motion to accept April 20th minutes.
Second.
I have a second. We'll roll call vote. Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Cutter?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Bork?
Yes.
And Mr. Sun.
Yes.
Motion passes 801. And moving on to town business. Moving right through. Do we have any updates from the town?
Just a couple of things. Monday is the Memorial Day parade and ceremony at Old Town Hall. The parade actually starts at LMS and comes down to the old town hall, and old fire station. Starts at 10 o'clock. The parade will start a little bit before that. And then, some people that driving around Pilgrim might have noticed we had a culvert that was letting go. So there's been a lot of work going on there, so, and that's actually turned into an extensive project. But we have the money and some funds to cover it, so we're in good shape there. Mr. Brown assures us that we're good. He's also stated that they have the paving projects that they've got listed. If the committee wants them, I can forward them to the streets that are gonna get done,
That would be great.
if you want them.
Thank you.
And then the other one was the fishing derby that went off, 2 weeks ago. It was a huge success, from what I understand. A lot of fun for the kids.
Sounds great. Does anyone have any questions for the town?
I had a question, based on the email about the chief. I was curious, I went and looked at the latest budget report, and police administration salaries are already 62% spent.
Mhm.
Have we been paying the chief this whole time?
Not since, the trial started,
Okay, but before that we were,
yes.
and then we're
From
paying.
when the AG, when the charges came down from the state, we stopped paying him. He used his earned time, and then, we haven't been paying him since. And the email that you all got, when we received word of what was going to happen, that was something that I asked Ms. Kleiner to share with the Budget Committee, because you're gonna see the line item coming up at some point, so, just so everyone had a heads up on it.
And I believe this French guy's getting paid more than he was, correct?
3,500 a week, isn't it?
It's 26 hours a week at 90-something dollars an hour. The MRI's getting, not what he's getting.
Right.
What MRI was getting, yeah. Correct.
So I have one thing for the town. I failed till I bring it up at the last meeting, so I'll bring it up again at this meeting. The lights are still on. And I know we kinda laugh about it, but we're running now like 9-10 months. And I know they're inexpensive to run, but over the course of a year,
Please get him a remote.
But isn't that part of security? Isn't that what?
streetlights in the
Any
daytime.
lights? Are you talking about the
I'm
gazebo?
talking the 3 streetlights when you come in Liberty Way
Mhm.
are on 24/7, and the gazebo's on 24/7.
I think that would be part of security.
During the day?
Aren't the school lights
No,
have?
not during the day, I'm sorry.
I'm not talking about nighttime, I'm talking 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, in the afternoon.
Is there a photo sensor on those?
There should be.
Well, I mean, the
would think they're all
gazebo might be
sensors,
blocked
but
by the trees or something.
There's gotta be a.
I think that the gazebo is designed, somebody said was designed to stay on at night.
Well, that's during the
But the
day.
other ones, I mean, that's probably an Eversource issue, but I'll ask Kim to check with Eversource on the streetlights.
There's no Christmas lights right now, though, right?
No, no. There were St.
It's
Patty's
just
and
one
Mother's Day,
day in
but
the Senate.
the first one I saw them, I go, why are they on again? I go, oh, St. Patty's Day, green.
I did want to mention that the new signs out front look really great. The new town
oh, yeah.
seal and the,
Yeah,
Police.
they come out nice, yeah.
yep, they look really nice.
Yep.
So thank you to, was it Mrs. Kleiner that initiated that?
Yeah, she did, yeah.
Yep, thank you to Mrs.
Which
Kleiner
signs?
for putting, did you notice
When
on
you come
the
in the
pillars
building,
when
on
you
the
come
pillars?
in? There's a new town seal
No.
and a police,
On these
a
days, right here?
badge.
Yep.
Yep, it's, and you know what, actually, I was visiting, we stopped by here to use the mailbox, I have family visiting, and we pull up and they go, where are we right now? And I realize there's no sign on the building that says Town Hall.
Really?
I don't think so, so that might be something to consider at some point, but, okay, anything else for the town? No? Moving on to school business. Any updates from the school, Mr. Cook?
Yeah, we met last night. The board met last night, and I think for the budget committee, we had a very, very preliminary draft of end-of-year expenses presented to the board. Our business administrator, Totten, did present the board a file with ideas. That file has not been shared with the board, so I don't have a link to send to the budget committee at this point. But some of the ideas that were out there were replenishing some of the accounts that the voters approved in March and using some of the money. In short, it's projected that there's going to be approximately $900,000 in underspend, specifically due to staff shortages, open positions that the school district has not been able to fill. We had a reduction, right, with Ms. Flynn, and that position was not backfilled, so that creates savings in the budget. That being said, there's about $600,000, again preliminary, that would be estimated to be returned to taxpayers at this point in time. There's some other projects that were just discussed briefly last night, such as enhancing the blue light system at the buildings, and some other walkie-talkie devices for
Wouldn't
better
grants be available
communications.
for that?
The grants for,
Wouldn't there be grants for safety upgrades?
Yeah.
That way we don't have to
And
tap
we-
into that money?
we did have grants already. This is in addition to, and in fact, there's even some grant money remaining that would offset a little bit of that cost. Yeah. Nothing's been approved, nothing's been voted on, just ideas at this point.
So one question I would have is that total inclusive of the overspend on the LMS project? So when you say $900,000, does that factor in the fact that we were like, what, 500 grand in the hole already?
Yes, so
So
that-
is it
that-
1.4?
That covers the deficit that we were projecting for this current financial year, and pays that. In addition to that, I reported to the board, I think 2 months ago at this point, about the food services deficit. It also includes a $50,000 approximate transfer to cover that deficit as well.
So it's a net 900, so we've already spent some of that down. So I'm trying to understand, is it a $1.4 million
It's a
underspend?
net 900, right, with the idea that we'll pay off some of the deficit, that will pay off food services,
Okay.
that if the board decides to roll in, the blue lights, the extension of that, the better communication devices at the schools, if the transfer to the reserve accounts is voter approved, after all that into consideration, it still leaves a balance of $600,000 that we could potentially return to taxpayers.
I just, in some ways, I find that incredibly frustrating, and I think it's great that there's an underspend, but I know I've been hearing from people about oh my gosh, everything's locked down, there's no money. And then we turn around and find out there's a lot of money, and so there's a disconnect between what the administration sees, I guess, and what the parents are seeing. 'Cause I don't even have a kid in the district, and I'm hearing the angst and the cutbacks and how their students' programmings are affected. So to see that kind of money still remains is just incredibly frustrating, especially since on top of that, we just increased 1.4 million on the budget for next year.
I second that. I hear the exact same thing. And the perception, to be 100% frank, is that the superintendent is just hoarding money to cover his own butt for the mistakes of prior years. And in fairness, it looks that way. Let's be honest.
And like I said, I think it's great that when we manage the money appropriately, and if you're buying pencils and you budgeted $1 and you have it for 50 cents, that's great. But if we're not spending on things that we're expecting to spend on, that's not really a savings, that's a program cut.
If Life Cycles kids can't get buses to go do Life Cycles, like learn life skills, then we're screwing the kids over versus,
So I would just, go ahead.
Mr. Cutter, is there a way to know with the positions that were filled, how many of those were not filled due to just not enough, they were advertised, no one applied for them, versus positions that weren't advertised?
Positions that weren't advertised.
Like they weren't gonna fill.
Well, they decided to not
Oh, just
advertise them
as a
because.
reduction. Yeah, I'm sure we can reach out to our HR director for that. Yeah, no problem.
And so, Chris, I think I asked this last time because you weren't here, and it wasn't, an answer. But I guess is there also concern around the amount of turnover that's happened this year as well?
So we have had some turnover. That is being managed by the board as best we can, and we'll leave it at that.
Okay. I'm just scanning the positions. There's 21 para positions, 5 special ed positions, a psychologist. Are you gonna be able to meet the special needs of next year?
I bet you go to any district and you're gonna see those numbers as far as paras.
That's universal.
It is, and that was discussed at length at the board, about open positions and attrition, et cetera, over recent meetings, and, it's not a unique Litchfield problem. right? It's certainly a state and a national problem. And the argument is, I mean, we're doing our best to certainly meet the needs of all the kids in the district, but if you don't have the staff to hire, it's hard, right? It's hard.
If you're not paying them, what every other food service or retail outfit out there is paying.
Yeah. You make
There's-
more at Target than you can be in a pair of Litchfields.
Like more just about anywhere.
Yeah.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So Mr. Totten feels pretty confident in that number. I guess if I take a look over the last couple of months in the financial report, we typically end up, spending somewhere between 600 and 700,000. Having said that, that would potentially over the last 2 months drain down 1.2 million against a 1.44 million number. I mean, is there a reason why we think, are we spending early? And that's why the 600 to 700 per month over, February to March, March to April is happening, and it's not gonna be a year-end crunch, I guess. Just looking for his degree of confidence that that money is going to be there, because it seems like the trend is going towards closer to about a 200,000 left over.
Well, I mean, look, so he was pretty confident in his report out to
Okay.
the board last night. Again, it's draft, right?
Right.
We're in May. We have another, 5-6 weeks left of the budget. So that's what he's forecasting at the moment. Some of those numbers are round numbers for sure, like food service at 50,000. Well, it's probably going to be 49 and change. You know what I mean? So there's going to be some fluctuation as we get down to the end of June.
So one thing I would ask him to confirm is that he's factored in summer paychecks. Because in the past, we had a new business administrator who forgot to project the summer, and all of a sudden our numbers were way off.
Yep.
So, before we get there, just
Fair point.
confirmation that that's been accounted for.
So one of the ideas I'll just share with the board, and just interested in thoughts. Again, no decisions or have been made at all, but we know that solar continues to be delayed. That's been reported to this board. I did ask that question last night, and the update to the board was solar should start to be installed very soon. However, it will not be able to come online until we have a switch to connect the solar to the grid, right, or to the power system. There is evidently only one manufacturer that makes this particular switch that we require, and that switch will be delivered to us in December of this year.
This year or next year?
This year,
Oh,
December of 2023. And then the superintendent was confident that it would be a pretty quick connect or inspection check to turn it on. From what I hear, that could be a couple of month process. I don't know. But I guess the solar should be live somewhere between end of year to, I'm gonna say February-ish, in that range.
So I'm gonna ask my usual question. That oil tank, we were told, basically could not pass inspection. Now, all of a sudden, are we gonna just turn a blind eye and have to put oil in to
No.
heat for the fall and early winter until that switch goes in?
No, because we're all paying electric heat, and we've been paying, if you look at the electric line, we're running an 80,000 square foot building on electric heat, and we have been for several months.
So what is that doing to our budget?
Hmm?
What is that doing to our
Oh,
budget?
that doesn't help, right? So there's definitely, so I talked about savings with physicians. There's definitely lines that have been overspent as well, right? And one of those lines is certainly utilities for electricity. So one of the ideas, and again, just an idea with the underspend, is we know already that what we planned for and budgeted for next year for electricity at LMS is not accurate, right? Because of the delays. So do we take some of that money and either advance pay Eversource or park it so we have it and we're not continuing to tap in for additional money for next year if we're already planning for an overspend?
Can you encumber for that purpose?
You can. So anyway, no decisions have been made, just an idea, all right? Another idea,
Our consultant should come in and give us options.
yeah, just options.
Our
It's just
consultant
options.
that we paid so much for.
So
Great
here's the
ideas.
other thing. Again, as part of this particular project, there was supposed to be rebates and buying electricity back from us. If now, not until December, how does that impact the economics of this project? When did we put into this project that there would either be some sort of positive value, whether it's in the form of a rebate or cash coming back for the solar power that we were generating? When was that scheduled? And what impact do we have from that date until this switch is on and functioning? And how much of that is going to impact this project as a cost miss?
I remember when it was presented to the taxpayers, I believe it was like year 9 or 10 before it actually starts to produce savings to the town, right? And that's considering in year 7, there's a balloon payment for the solar. Let's not forget that. And so year 9 or 10, obviously the delays don't help any of the factors that were presented. They don't. It erodes essentially a lot of the savings that were projected and sold to the taxpayers. There's no sugarcoating that.
I think I'd like to see a revised cost analysis of this project, honestly. Like, I know what we were told. I'd like to see what we actually bought, because this is, we were told what is it, $3 million to either do this or $3 million to do this, and now I feel like it's, well, $3 million to do this or $5 million to do this. Like, and let's just, I'd like to know what is the projected cost at the end of this that we're actually gonna be paying? Because we've lost revenue, rates have gone up, now we're paying in electricity we weren't supposed to be paying. Like, the cost of this project just keeps, so how much at the end of the day is this project costing us? And how much do you guys anticipate your electric budget being over as a result of this delay? Are we talking like 50 grand? Are we talking 125 grand? Like, what are we talking?
For electricity?
Yeah.
I don't know the number.
So I think we need to know, like, what, like, if it's 20 grand, one thing. If you're talking like, oh, our budget's 125,000, I'm like,
Yeah, I would actually like to see the administration come in either our September or October meeting, and let's have a full discussion on what the project was projected, where are the misses, and what has this delay caused in terms of, Andrew brings up electricity, what other items are we running into that ended up being overspend, et cetera. I think a financial examination of the status of the project is
overdue.
needed.
I
I would ask either in September or October.
would actually say August, because our September meeting is when we're starting the town budget process.
Okay.
So I think August is gonna be our last meeting before we get into the budget process, and that one probably would give us the most time to have that conversation.
So I would encourage you, if you don't, or just need a refresher, within the business administrator report, I sent the link out last night. I know Chairman sent it out this morning or today. Within the financial reports, there's actually a very detailed, I think, breakout of Fund 30. Fund 30 is our capital projects fund, with a lot of the details that break out this project very specifically.
Yeah, including change orders. and
Including change orders, and it's reconciled to the penny against all vendors. So Mr. Totten has been very, very transparent about that, and I think he's done a really nice job.
I know there's a concern, I think at our last meeting, that you guys were gonna dip into the special ed reserve fund. Is that still a concern, or did you go over that? But, well, obviously you don't have to dip into it because you've got.
There's been no decision on that at this point. Yeah.
Is that to help offset the deficit here? Is that what?
There was concern, one of the, we talked a lot about underspend, right? One of the overspends, most certainly, and you can see it in the expense reports, is for special education transportation, right? And with that overspend on those lines, would we potentially need to dip into our reserve account to offset some of those costs?
Okay.
That was the idea. Board has taken no action on that.
The reality is, I would hope that the board would use some of your unexpended funds and not touch that reserve for when you actually do need it. Because the reality is, if it's a cost, then it should be logged in your ledger against your revenue. So it shouldn't be like, oh, well, we have a reserve fund, so let's return 600 grand over here, but we'll take 75 over here. No, log the 75 against your revenue.
It's not revenue, it's underspent.
It's taxpayer money, it's revenue.
It's underspent.
Can,
It's general
Can-
fund balance.
can funds from that balance be moved into that trust fund, or would
To the
that have
special- I asked that
required-
question last night.
I don't think so.
I asked that question last night, and the board consensus was we would not be able to do that. So I said, that's great, right? You know, we always talk about, you know, the what if we have such an excess being planned for anyways. What if we take a small portion of that and move it into that special services account? It needs to go to voter approval
Right,
before we can do
that's,
any
the
of that.
warrant article was zero
Yeah.
cost from underspend.
Yeah.
Anything else for school?
Oh, did I?
So those reports, like, again, the school board financials, Mr. Totten's updating them every month. They're now sent, hopefully you find it like clockwork, after the second meeting of our, each month that we have. And I find them actually to be quite detailed. Just another tool going into this next budget season. Mr. Totten did present last night, and it should be on the recording. He presented it live on TV. They're working with another software this year to give better analytics into the budget that allow you to drill it and understand it kind of through visual pie charts and such. So it'll be just another tool potentially that the budget committee can use.
So would we have access to like a read-only version of that where I can pull out whatever information?
It's still
or-
beta, like they're still.
Or you're gonna just give me, like, this is the pie chart I think you wanna see?
No. It'll be an interactive link. So
Okay.
you have a link and you can,
Not that I'm gonna use it, because I'm perfectly fine with
Yeah.
paper and pencil, but
no.
for those who want
It'll be a
to.
link where you can visualize it on your screen and
A
project it.
big pie in your laptop.
I'm going blind, I'm getting old. I'm getting old, so I can make my fonts big.
Did you have,
No, I think he hit mine, so.
did he hit your
The-
your
Well, my only,
questions?
the encumbrances, are we gonna see those before the school board votes on them finally? Because usually we got a list, and then we're like, I'm not so sure, like, usually we got to see it before you guys final voted it. Are we not going to see it until after the fact?
I don't have a list yet to share. I am anticipating, and that's the truth. I am anticipating.
Oh, I know.
I'm anticipating seeing that in preparation for our next meeting. And the board discussed our second meeting of June is June 21st. I think it's that. So that would be the meeting where we vote. So that is before the budget committee meeting.
I know, it's just some things never change, so, no offense to you, it's just
Well, we
like.
have to action it before the end of the month, right? So.
Well, I feel like in previous years, we were provided with a list for the May meeting. We got to chat about it, sent our comments back, and then the school board voted on it, and it just feels like we're not doing that this year.
I don't know that we aren't. I never said that we weren't.
Well, if we're not, you guys have to vote by the end of the month, and we don't meet till the end of June, there's really no time.
I can't help that cycle. I can't help
No.
that. But what I can do is if the board receives a file
Yeah.
for our June 7th meeting, I'd certainly be delighted to share it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So not sure if this is a school board question or more clarification on the agenda. For both the chairs, is the item of budget process with school board going to recap the meeting that the chairs had between the two groups? Or is that the budget process with the school board, us discussing any, like, changes to the calendar or anything like that?
It's under new business, isn't it? Budget process?
Yeah,
We can
Mr.
nix-
Taylor, I put that on the agenda, that was just to recap the meeting that we had last week.
Okay.
There's been no change to the calendar. It was really just to kind of wrap up and share some fine tuning that I think we are gonna do for the process this year.
Okay, thank you.
It wasn't there.
No, it was not posted.
And I thought there was supposed to be all three boards.
It was just the chairs.
They were invited.
Yeah.
We invited the Board of
The s-
Selectmen, the school board, and it ended up just being the school board meeting at this past one. But we'd like to continue to hold these meetings and invite everyone to them, so. With that, anything else for Mr. Cutter?
Currently.
Thanks for the information.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, let's move on to member input and new business. We can start with finalizing the best practices. I didn't really make many changes to that file, except for taking out the mention of I think I had put in 5 days or something. So I just took that piece out, since we clarified that it's in the bylaws already. It's redundant.
Excellent.
Yeah, not worth,
That removed my concern.
worth that. So, did anyone else have any input towards that?
Thank you for doing that.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. And I guess I wanted to just open it up to the committee. Do we want to vote to adopt it annually, or is it just something that's on our portal for people to reference?
I may be just catching up here, but I'm on the portal, what am I looking for?
Oh, so if you go to, on the portal, let me pull up my portal. If you go to LBC documents, the menu on the top left,
Best practices.
there's a best practices draft, and it kind of just goes through, I'm sorry, Mr. Plansky was here when we went through this originally. It goes through some history to the board, and just some sort of things that I've kind of picked up after being on the committee for a few years, and the different ways that people are looking at budgets, and trying to pull all that information out so that if you have, say, a new person come in, here's just some background information, catch them up to speed quickly, and just kind of keep things, steering things in a more productive direction.
Yeah, thank you for putting it together. Looks great.
It's almost like a FAQ sheet.
It's almost like PC member for dummies.
Cliff notes.
Yeah, exactly. I do better when things are written out for me, so then when they're not there, I just write them for myself.
I don't believe this is something we need to vote on and adopt. Since it's not a part of our bylaws, I think it's just something we continue to revisit every year and see if if there's any updates or changes to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
to me, it's more of a working document, because at some point
Yes.
you'd be like, oh, that'd be really good for our best practices, we should note that down.
Right.
And that way it's,
And looking at other budget committees, other towns nearby, they would have sometimes some information about how they would go about either starting the budget. One town mentioned, every year we do a zero-based budget, and other towns would do it. They just had it written out on their website, I think, for the general public to kind of know their methodologies. So, so this will be on the portal for anyone. Anyone can go in and find that. And I don't think I mentioned at the start of the meeting, the Budget Committee does now have a published portal on the town website. If you go to Town Hall at the top of litchfieldnh.gov, look under Budget Committee, and it'll say Budget Committee Portal. And we have the menu on the left will give you the current or most recent meeting and all the documents that are shared for that meeting for easy access, so that people listening from home can find these documents, follow along. And so that, because come budget season, there's so many documents that get circulated. That way it's one place to keep everything organized. And we're also adding and this will come up between for the budget process for the school board, with the school board, we talked about those working questions documents. And so I will be putting a live file on here that we can track the questions. We don't necessarily need to use that as the main form of communications, but everything should at least be tracked there. And then there will be a way to have, get notified if there's an update to that file. It'll shoot you an email.
almost like an RFI log, I like it.
That's what I'm hoping for. I have to figure out how to do it. But Mr. Brunel said it was possible, so.
Before we leave that item, I just want to say thank you, Ms. Stevens, for really kind of revamping the portal, making it nice and clean and keeping it updated. I think it's going to be a good tool, not only for us, but for the town to leverage and access information too. So she's really taking the lead on that, and I just wanted to publicly thank her for that.
You're welcome.
Especially once we hit the budget committee meeting, I can never find anything we're talking about. That's like go through my emails and find one spot's amazing.
And it's a little neater than my mess of a folder that I had last year. All right. So, anything else on the best practices? No? Okay. Thank you for that. Moving on to budget process with the school board. Mr. Sun, do you want to give a recap of our meeting with the school board chair and vice chair?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a chance last Thursday to sit down with Ms. Ames, Ms. McDonald, and Dr. Jetty and Mr. Totten were there as well. And really the purpose of the meeting was to go through our, school budget process that we've used the last few years, make sure we're all on the same page. Did it work? What can we fine tune? I started off the conversation by just thanking them for getting us the budget, nearly a week before we get together. And the value of that, we've kind of continually chipped away at that over the last few years. So I, appreciative of that. We talked about the joint sessions on November 2nd and November 7th, and, continuing to have it in a format where a principal or a department chair would present, and then there would be an opportunity for questions, not only questions by the school board, but questions by the budget committee as well. And not holding those questions to the very end, but giving us an opportunity to ask those questions in real time. And that was agreed upon that was a good format. Then we talked about the school budget review sessions on the 9th and potentially the 16th if we need it, of doing kind of a top level recap, that there wasn't a need for, if Dr. Jetty and Mr. Totten were the two presenting it, there wasn't a need for them to go through the full presentation again. Really one slide, what has changed? Where did the budget go up? Where did the budget go down? We've already heard the presentations either in person or via recordings. So give us a top level summary and then let us ask additional questions or clarifications there. So I think that will streamline our process, and fingers crossed, maybe we talk about an early start on the 9th and might not need the meeting on the 16th, but that's something for us to consider. We talked about that. We then talked about the timing of getting the warrant articles, and that we wanted to get those early and in advance of that December 14th meeting, which is when the presentations take place. So again, that we had an opportunity, much like with the budget, we have an opportunity to look it over, to come prepared with questions on the 14th, which is going to make that meeting much more efficient. So all of those were positive conversations and things that we agreed upon. Kind of the last part of that conversation around the process was around what Ms. Stevens was alluding to. How do we keep track of questions? And what we shared that I don't think the school realized kind of the way it was done last year was, the questions were captured in a document and then they were shared out to us instead of a live version of it. And so it's sometimes hard to keep track of things and see things. So that was acknowledged that was something we could do a better job of. And what we're going to do is we're going to have two different Google Docs or Google Sheets. One that the school district will own. So when a question is asked, it gets entered in there, and that's going to be a working place for them to get their notes together, to get the answers organized. And then there will be one that we own, that I create or Ms. Stevens creates, that has the final answers. And that will live on the portal. That will be a place that community members can see. All those questions are there, so that come January, if we need to go back and revisit some questions, they're all going to be there. All of those answers are going to be there. Like Ms. Stevens said, we'll be able to set up notifications. I know Ms. Douglas is a fan of notifications, so that when someone provides an update to an answer, we'll get notified that file has changed, and you can see the answers to those questions. So that was a process that we kind of talked through, again, how to just make things smoother and make it better. That was really kind of our conversation around the process piece. We then spent some time talking about, not related to the budget process, but around developments in town and how that could impact enrollment, kind of given Ms. Stevens' involvement with the planning board. It centered back to a question that she had asked a few weeks ago of the school board, and the developments that have been taken into consideration, how that would impact enrollment. So we actually took that time, since we were there in the room, and looked at some data and looked at things from the planning board. And there's a document that's kind of being populated that's tracking really the trend around these new developments that are being built in town. How's that going to impact student enrollment? Ultimately, how's that going to impact the budget? So That's a high-level recap of how we spent our time last Thursday. Ms. Stevens, anything you want to add to that I may have forgot?
I think you pretty much covered it. I believe the school board, or at least the, Mrs. Hames and Ms. McDonald were saying that they'd like to update the student population formula to account for those new developments, using data of similar developments already in town. They said that formula was, I think, 5 years old. So they are going to look at whoever the consultant was that initially created it, and it has been fairly accurate, is just going to double check, take a look at it, see. There's some large developments that have not even been applied for in town, so we can't necessarily use those we can't plan for those just yet, but it'll be good to see if it ends up changing that population trend.
Yeah. And just one last thing I'll add, thank you. You know, really the intent of this meeting was how do we continue to improve our process when we work together during the budget season? How can we be more efficient, get information faster, be more transparent? That was kind of the guiding principles of us coming together, and I think we made some small steps forward that's going to be beneficial to this committee once we get into budget season with the school.
Does anyone have any questions or anything about the meeting? We do plan to meet again with just the chairs and we would invite the chair and vice chair of the Board of Selectmen and the chair and the vice chair of the school board. And I'd have to pull up what date that is
Yeah, we were
planned.
proposing a date in July, and that purpose was really to look at potential warrant articles and through the lens of what is the town thinking of, what is the school taking of, so that come March, when we're collectively putting something towards the town, you know, we're being thoughtful about what's being put in front of the taxpayer. So that was kind of the genesis of that potential conversation with just the elected officials in July.
I don't think the school will have any idea in July, quite
I
frankly.
think too, that if we're talking about the CIP, they're not gonna be going through their stuff until August and requesting departmental stuff, which will affect the town, potentially the town's warrant articles. So July might be it might be a good time for coffee, but I don't know that you're gonna get much accomplished. Or,
And we have the school board's meeting once in July, I believe it's July 12th. And I know there's other things on the agenda. I don't think that we'll have any view of what warrant articles will be.
yeah,
Oh,
It's too early.
way too early, yep.
We will go back and try and see if there's, because we do want to keep that communication open. So we can look at other things. We had a few other ideas of things that would be good we thought to talk about, so we'll go back through and look through that list and see what we can come up with. But thank you for that feedback. All right, next up, we have impact fees. Mr. Sun, for that, impact fees, did you want me to just go over what the planning board has been working on?
Yeah, I added that to the agenda, I think, for twofold. One, for that purpose of what the planning board has been working on. But also, I know there was a discussion at the last CIP meeting that Ms. Douglas attended in regards to impact fees that I think maybe had expired or lapsed. And so I really just wanted a discussion around visibility into impact fees and this group's responsibility, if that's the right word, to just have some visibility into the impact fees and make sure we don't find ourselves in a position where we're giving money back to developers.
all right, yes, I think there's two topics then. One is the recalculation of it. But yeah, we ran into a situation where some of them were expiring, so we had asked the town to potentially provide an update when you do your revenue and your other items, include impact fees by department as well, so that as these departments are determining and deciding which projects they want to put forward, what pool of money do they have available already, So we don't say, oh, you know what, I'd like a pergola at the library. Oh darn, our impact fees just expired. So this way they can be like, oh, we have impact fees, let's do a pergola. So that we can be more proactive in planning it as opposed to, I think the current situation is they have the department heads ask, hey, how much do I have? As opposed to saying, hey, here's what's available. How would you use it? So I think it's two separate discussions. Because yes, the impact fees hadn't been recalculated since what, like 2014?
Something like that, yes. So, the planning board is committed to reevaluating those impact fees annually with the update of the CIP. So CIP would get updated, then the planning board would recalculate all of the impact fees, because that's really, those projects on the CIP is really how the impact fees are calculated. So this most recent recalculation that, it's going to public hearing on June 20th at the planning board, the June 20th planning board meeting. One of the things is, updating the school impact fees. We tried to, right now it's separated out by the individual school buildings. We were hoping to be able to put it into one pot so that the district could use those fees, where they really
But that makes
found it necessary,
sense, because
right?
you don't necessarily know which school's gonna get impacted by a various development,
Well,
so.
the issue is that, without an actual project on the CIP, there's nothing to say, we are planning for this piece, this large project, and it's necessary because of, we might have these, you know, this much percentage of this project is due to new development. So you take that, so say elementary school, it's, I think it's on the CIP for 35 million right now. Well, we can't charge impact fees on that full 35 million. It would just be the extra, I believe it was like 140 students that, going from a school of 500 students or less than 500 students, planning for one at 600 students.
Okay.
So we can only take that portion of those, that newly added capacity, and charge impact fees for it. That means this most recent update, because the only school project that isn't something like energy efficiency, where it's just things that need to be maintained or updated. So the only project that was due to new developments, that had impact from new developments, was the elementary school project, which means those impact fees can only be applied to the elementary school fund. And that's the way that the impact fees laws are written, so we couldn't just create that into
Well, I mean, that
school
makes
district
sense when you think
fund,
about it, because
right.
of the size of the CHS, it has enough capacity to absorb some, so you wouldn't be adding on because of new development, because they'd be.
Right. So it can really only be attributed to that new development, but that also is that much more of an incentive for each department to have these things recorded onto the CIP, so that, because another thing that we learned you can use impact fees for is paying this LMS lease, a portion of it, because we created a few new classrooms.
Right.
We expanded the kitchen. So the school, Mr. Totten is finding out how much of basically the North Branch construction bills were attributed to those expansions.
Okay.
We can then charge impact fees
To
just
cover
towards
some of
that piece.
Okay.
And we'd be able to pay the lease through, we'd be able to put those funds towards the lease payments. And same thing if there's something through these discussions, Mrs. Kleiner was also at this most recent planning board meeting. We kind of like her ears perked up. There's a lot of other things that we could possibly be charging impact fees for, like new equipment at the dump. I believe we bought a whole new, it wasn't just replacement, there was a new one that we bought. So we could be charging impact fees and put something towards that if we have another one of those onto
Like
the CIP.
snow plows, because we have more roads to do.
So, exactly, so it wouldn't be replacing police cruisers, but if we needed to add a police cruiser because of additional population, that could be charged. So it's just that much more incentive to get all those projects list it out. And then the planning board will be updating these every year with the CIP cycle.
Nice.
So I guess my only concern about it being based on the CIP is the CIP is based on the footprint of, and the makeup of the town today. All of a sudden you add in, let's say, 100 townhomes in a part of town. No one knew that that was going to be coming, so therefore I would look at it that that would not be on the CIP. Can the planning board look at it and say, you know what? Assume the town is at 100% capacity of all types of facilities, and then, you know what, if you're going to add 100 townhomes, well, that means we need another fire truck. Now, if that means we decide to retire a fire truck, but why are we not taking advantage of, you know what, if you want to develop and add more burden on the town, well, we assume the worst and hope for the best, and be able to say, okay, once you hit a certain number, that means you get a more fire apparatus, an additional cruiser. That also means that within the school, these particular items are needed. And you know what, maybe that's overkill because we're only at 90% capacity, but based on what Ms. Douglas has talked about, we have gone way under, and it's far too cheap for somebody to develop in this town because the impact fees ratio, calculation has not been updated in years. Can we swing it so far the other way that, you know what, yeah, if you want to do it, you got to pay.
And did you say, because you just mentioned retiring a fire truck, but you said at the recycling center, because they didn't trade in the backhoe, so now it's an additional one, that they can utilize impact fees. So you're not gonna retire a fire truck, you're just gonna take an additional one.
Well, you could buy a new one, and then when this one gets old, just not replace it right away.
So the thing is, I agree with you. There should be a plan for this expansion, but it's really the departments that need to know when that cutoff is of, because the planning board doesn't know when we're like strapped on fire
Right.
trucks and we're gonna need one more. But if the fire department has this idea of, we're going to need this truck once we hit this much more population, and then that's when they would put that onto the CIP, or at least have it planned. Let me go back to our planner, because I don't know that it has to be on the CIP. It could be, it might be able to just be, it just has to be planned for. It can't just be,
But I guess that's the
we think
concern,
we're
though,
gonna get a
right?
fire truck one day,
Right.
so let's charge these impact fees for some project that we're not really planning for.
But I guess what I'm looking at is if we consider that the town is at 100% capacity, and let's say somebody wants to add in 50 homes in a brand-new development. Okay, well, in order to do that, you know what? I would need a fire truck, and I need an additional cruiser, and I need equipment at the dump, because those people are gonna be bringing stuff to the dump. My point is, why don't we assume that the town is maxed out, can't take any more people dragging on the resources, and then, you know what, Mr. Developer, you want to come in, guess what? Your impact fees are going to be made up of us getting a new fire truck, a new cruiser, a new this, a new this, and a new
School
this.
bus, because that one over there is gonna need a new run.
Exactly. I mean, it's just, like, can we just then over-plan in terms of what the needs are and collect those impact fees instead of trying to go off of a CIP program of,
Which is-
well, when do you need it? Well, maybe not now. I mean, we have a very valuable resource. People want to build in our town. Unfortunately, we're killing the current taxpayers. So that means the newest ones coming in are gonna have to pay more than their fair share to get into town to help lessen the burden on the people that are already in town.
I
'Cause
don't think you can just say that you're at 100% if you're not at 100%. I'm certain there's studies that are done.
We are studying that.
Right. As far as, here's how many fire trucks you have, here's how many firemen you have, here's how many policemen you have, how many police cars, and, square miles and population. So
But could
can't-
you make an argument, though, that, you know what, old truck that's over in the fire station, now at this point, if it has 50 more houses that it potentially needs to go to, needs to be retired and upgraded to a new one? And again, I mean, I know we can't, like, do people, But we can at least try to get as much of
But even-
equipment as we can.
Even equipment, I mean, that, the fire department would know that answer as far as
But
what
the-
they need for apparatus.
But the
Same with
problem
me.
is, that, in my opinion, it's chicken egg, right? Like, we don't know, but I never anticipated that development being that big. So how would we have proposed the capital,
Development.
the one that's being proposed over at the old BAE
That
site?
has not been applied for yet, so we can't.
The rumors are much larger than I anticipated for such a site. So how would we plan that on the capital improvement plan, saying, hey, you know what? So it almost needs to be looked at on a development by development basis. Like, if there is a development of that size going in over there, that's a new bus run. How do you factor that into the capital improvement plan? If we, maybe we do need a new cruiser, how do you capture that? Because we don't know. So then do we have a chance to catch up later and say, hey, by the way, that development over there, love it, it's great, but we didn't quite capture all the costs. Can we do a redo on your impact fees? Pretty sure no. So how do you proactively figure out what these things are gonna cost? Because there is gonna be a cost, but we don't know until we know what we're looking at.
So we're also updating the economic development chapter, which will include, of our master plan. That will include a study of this is how much property is left undeveloped and here's potential, I forget exactly what the term was, but it's some
Yeah.
sort of max out, population.
9,500 not too long ago.
And so we're gonna be updating those numbers. And this is a question for our planner, but I'm pretty sure if we can put something into that chapter that says, once the population hits or is projected to hit this, we expect to need this new apparatus, this new, large capital purchase, and charge based off of that, but I will find out.
And my ask would be that number would be current plus one.
Mm-hmm.
So first one in, boom, there you go, it triggers it.
But I think too, we have to be careful on just using blanket numbers, right? Because if you put in one house on a row, 10 houses, but they're all spread out, that's more easy to absorb than putting, say, 50 houses in one location, because now what could have been absorbed on existing bus routes now needs its own route. What could be absorbed by existing plow routes now needs its own plow route. So I think you need to be a little more careful as we do this to actually capture the actual costs. Not every development can be absorbed into the existing infrastructure. Some of them, maybe it's, once you hit 10 houses, you're your own group, you need to be evaluated by the impact you specifically have in your area. Because right now, I don't feel like we do that. It's just like, well, we went from 9,000 or 8,000 to 8,250, so the additional gets spread out, but that's not how the impact is. The difference, the one house on my street is much different than 10 houses on one street, or.
Well, but you can't charge impact fees for the salary of extra policemen.
But if I
and
need a
things like
new
that.
bus run because of a specific development, I should be able to charge that to the development.
Then that would be on, right, that would be on in the school's impact fees, right.
But see, not really though, because if the
Charge for
population,
the bus, the actual bus, if we had to buy another bus.
it should go to that specific
Yeah.
development that bus is serving, not spread out over the 20 houses throughout town that get put in. Because that's not how the impact's gonna be. Because if I have 20 houses throughout town and each one has a kid, odds are I can absorb that on the existing
Here,
bus
I think
run.
you should go to a planning
There's
board meeting.
different,
I'm just saying
It's
for
the
budget
this is the budget
purposes,
meeting.
right.
for budget purposes, I think we need to be able to plan that if a new development of a certain size goes in that is going to specifically need a new bus, it should be captured.
Every house we charge for a new fire hydrant.
No, we don't charge, not a new one, just
Is that what, because that's the one that kills us every time.
Until we can get them switched over to
Okay.
Manchester, right?
All right, so I will bring that back, and like I said, the public hearing is June 20th. I will say that the impact fees, like the total impact fees charged for the schools, they did not change that much. What really changed is that it's all going to an elementary school pot as of today,
I think we
the
should
proposed one.
So what
And
value
then-
do they include for that? Is it the cost of the project or the total cost of the project once you factor everything in, say, interest and
No, it's
and
no
all the other
interest.
stuff?
It's not calculated with interest. It's just the base cost,
So if their
and
addition,
it's only their,
right, so if their portion of 150 students I have to pay extra that I don't get to charge them for the interest associated with the cost of the 150 students also. Even though the cost of the 150 students carries interest, I can't charge it.
The impact fees can gain interest.
Not at the same rate at which I'm going to be paying.
Right, that the bond is.
Where you get
No, that's
150
not how
students?
it's.
Well,
that's
they're
not-
saying that the elementary school is, if you go from 450 to say 600, you can charge the 150 differential for the 100 existing students versus the impact you expect to have. So
But
we use the number
You have
of,
to build a bigger building. So your
Right.
impact fees are gonna be on the additional space.
right, so my point is, it should also be included the interest
Space
associated
plus
with
the
it.
interest over 15 years.
Yeah, I shouldn't, I mean, if that's the cost of that part of the building, that cost carries interest. Why should I have to pay for that?
I'll bring those back to the planning board.
Are you talking about taking all three schools' impact fees and putting them into one pot? Because I don't think you can do that legally.
Didn't you
It's-
exhaust all
I
the other
think we
ones?
discussed that before, and at the town level, and it was decided that legally you couldn't do that. It's gotta be for each individual school.
The thing is, there's no project planned at
Mhm.
CHS or LMS. So it
Yes.
just so happened that the recalculation of the impact fees, the total price charged to a developer per dwelling unit
Yes.
ends up being similar to what was initially going to each school building,
Mhm.
but we don't have a so like, say if
Yeah,
there
but
was
you're
a
always
dollar.
doing projects there, like you did lights there, you did water upgrade, pump upgrade,
Right,
et
but
cetera. So
they're
that's
not
what the
new.
impact fees are for.
They're not new
The
development,
lights
that's
weren't
maintenance.
used for impact fees though, right?
We had originally approved for them.
The pump was.
Originally, we did the
You're
lights.
talking about maintenance, though, not impact fees.
Well, it was an upgrade. But, and we
Switched
get,
all
we
the lights.
re-released
Stations
impact
now?
fees
Thought that
for
was
the
free.
lights.
People?
And then we had to revote to
And
Yeah.
re-release them for the pump,
Yeah.
because they found the
I
money
never
for
heard
that
of
somewhere. But I think legally it has to go to separate schools. Each school has their own impact fee structure for upgrades and renovations.
But there are no plans currently.
That, as
But
soon
there's
as
always gonna
something-
be upgrades. If it needs a new roof, you can collect impact fees for that. If it needs, I don't know, new asphalt or new anything, that's what your impact fees are for. So
Where-
if you take that money and put it into one pot and you deplete it, I don't think legally you can do it. I'm pretty sure that, the town, we discussed it.
So then you
and
can
it
get the
was said
school
that
in
you-
here for the CHS project to put on the chart.
I'm just saying that I don't think you can legally put them all in the same pot.
The planning board has a little bit of research to do.
Well, I mean, because if it's only GMS right now, but we're saying that there's some we could recover from LMS, it seems like we should be adding an LMS column anyway.
Yes, so that's what, but we don't have a number to calculate
Right.
that yet, so he's
So
trying to
when
get
you
me
go to
that.
a builder, you charge them impact fees for GMS and impact fees for LMS, impact fees for town hall?
Every school has their,
It's
yeah,
it's a
it's
total
listed
number.
right out, yeah, and then it's all added up to one
I
number.
know that's how it is now, but I'm thinking like a large, say Manchester,
Yeah, I don't know about Manchester, I know about Litchfield.
okay? But I don't know, it's school impact fees. I would think that school impact fees are school impact fees.
It's each individual one.
It's, so the city of Manchester would only say, if the house is developed in this
District.
area, right? And these students would go to this elementary school, they can't use impact fees from that house and improve the elementary school across the city. It's gotta be only this elementary school. So, and the only reason, it's not taking everything and putting it into one pot. It's recalculating for each school what projects are planned for. And right now, there's nothing planned for LMS and CHS. So say, I saw in the CIP there's no dollar value to it, adding field lights. That would be increasing the capacity of the fields. So that could be, a piece of that could be charged with impact
I don't
fees,
think they
but
can
you
do that.
can't
That was
do
part of the
asphalt.
original agreement to build the school.
But they could do
can't put lights up there.
bleachers, they could do bleachers or
I
something.
don't, I'm not trying to argue whether or not they can do field lights, I'm just saying that's a project that would increase capacity if it were.
I would increase
Because
capacity.
you could use it more.
Cause you could schedule more
Maybe we
use
can
of
just
that
encumber the
field.
money for that.
And like if the rec committee wanted to replace Talent Hall, they would
have their
only
own
be able
fees.
to use impact fees on any expansion of it, not just
Or
the-
renovation.
just a replacement.
No,
As
or
long as the
renovation.
renovation
Yeah.
increased capacity.
Yeah, upgrades and improvements, yes.
So I guess the point is, though,
Bathrooms
that we
only.
have multiple developments
Mhm.
that are potentially being reviewed or potentially being proposed, why can't we then figure out the moon and the stars so that that way, at least, you know what? I don't know as far as how impact fees are calculated, but, you know, by acre, foot, yard, I don't care what, unit?
Dwelling unit, yeah.
Dwelling unit times 10,000 or 20,000, something high so that we actually get the money we need before we go and expand to the point that it overtaxes the existing residents.
We can only charge so much that we can legally charge. We can't overcharge for some project
Right, but if
that's
you
not
put
planned
together a
for.
list of all the wish list items, like, for example, one more person means we have a brand-new town hall.
And
Throw that in
that's, we can put that in the economic development chapter and potentially the CIP if
So I want to build
if
a
a
wall.
department says, look,
Dude.
we're 50 dwelling units away from needing this, we need to start. You know,
You
turning
haven't,
the
you
corner.
haven't built in Boston. You should see the stuff they wrangle out of developers down there. I need a new intersection. So I'm gonna be 2
All
million.
that back, I
Done.
know. So I do want to move this back to, I will bring all this back to the planning board. But I'm hoping to move on to more budget committee related things, if that's okay. Because we do still have, committee reports that,
Alright, so-
Mr. Leary
okay.
would like to hear about, unless Mr. Sun had anything else on impact fees. Did you have anything else to add?
I did not. Good discussion.
All right, so I'll go into the town's capital improvement committee because it kind of ties into this discussion. We did meet earlier this month. Time was spent trying to develop a consistent set of parameters under which departments should submit their requests. The concern is that a set dollar amount, which is currently at $50,000, would capture most major purchases for most departments, but it makes it difficult for smaller departments such as library or recreation to be included for consideration. So the question was whether we should be a percentage of their budget, or should there be a set value? Should there be a range of values based on department size? How do we get the various departments to all be represented? Because the library really struggled last year because they could combine all of their projects and they still didn't hit the $50,000 threshold. So how do we have them represented? So that was part of the discussion. We also was a timeline for completing the review. So back to what we were saying earlier, I believe the plan was to get through majority of the reviews by August, with the expectation that gives us time to review, make recommendations, present, and in time for the warrant article process. So that's why my concern is if you guys meet in July and we don't finish up until August, early September, our timelines don't quite mesh. And then we did discuss impact fees, and it suggested that a report be provided that notes available balances and expiration dates so that departments could better tailor their requests to ensure that monies are utilized in accordance with their purpose. Because we do run into situations where we're like, that would have been a great project if only we didn't let that money expire. So if we could be more proactive in using it and making sure that everybody knows what's available, we can actually expend them to the benefit of the town rather than returning them to the developer who paid them.
The home buyer pays it. The
Well-
developer doesn't pay it.
Whoever gets the rebate check.
Well,
So-
the developer might get the check, but the home buyer, they pay the impact fee.
Right.
It's built into every
I'm
house.
pretty sure the impact fees goes back to the homeowner.
Whomever, I'd like to spend it.
No, it's whoever pays it. Whoever writes the
I
check.
got it back directly from the town.
You did?
See, we didn't spend it all.
Because we had a couple of issues with that the last couple of years of a developer and a homeowner fighting over it, who was supposed to get it.
Really?
But we can solve that by spending it.
Every developer builds it into the price of the house. If he's gonna write the check, he's gonna
Oh,
build it in.
definitely, yeah.
So, in my opinion, it should go to the homeowners, because if it goes back,
Because
because
they paid for it
they
in their
paid for it
price.
originally, yes.
So that's where that stands, and it sounded like that was gonna be in the works, and we meet again soon.
Soon.
Monday,
Early June, June 1st, 2nd, something?
this coming Monday.
Yes, that one.
This Monday?
No,
Nice.
it's Memorial Day Monday.
yeah.
You're right, so the following Monday.
Following?
Yes. Yes.
Anything else for committee reports?
Is there a
Do you have
school one?
facilities?
So actually, I haven't reported since, we've had 3 meetings. One yesterday, one on the 10th, and I don't recall when the other one was. on 412. And that, on 412, the first one is when we started discussion as far as the possibility of consolidation of the schools. So if you haven't watched the last 3 meetings, I'd suggest you do, because there was a lot of information provided. On 510, Kyle Barker came and basically laid out 9 different scenarios of consolidation, and I think you probably presented this last evening, right, at the school board?
Yesterday's meeting was presented, yes, yeah.
And there were 9 different scenarios, and they're, I mean, I can just rattle them off for you if you'd like.
There's really 6, like,
Right,
there's
but
really,
he went through like 9 different options.
yeah.
Option 1 is repair only, it's the lowest cost, obviously, but no state aid. Option 2, renovation of K through 4. Again, it's too close to 3A, your parking issues is like redoing GMS. Option 3, replace GMS at the GMS site, but again, you're still, think of the time restraints and space restraints. You're gonna demolish a building where you're gonna put the kids in the meantime, and you're still building it on wetlands. Option 4, replace on the LMS site, which we've already said, there's a lot of drawbacks from that. It's, again, wetlands. Option 5 is the new site across the street, just build a school. Another one is to move 7 and 8 to the high school, convert LMS to a K through 6.
That's really important, because there was a lot of feedback about what would the cost be to consolidate down to 2 schools, right? And then to do an addition at both LMS as well as CHS to accommodate the size of the classes. And so there was a small investment paid for that. That number, the numbers themselves were not presented last night.
Right.
So I don't have that to share. I don't know the cost of that. That's what we asked for, and we also asked for more of a PowerPoint presentation, because we're gonna wanna present this likely in the early fall and start to get the message out to the voters, because if you recall, the way the warrant article was written in March is we have until this March to present something back to the voters, right? Else the land is null and void and has to be renegotiated.
Kyle Barker brought up a very good point. Don't necessarily consider just the financial impact as far as the project. Because if you're talking building an extension at the high school, that means you're gonna be putting 7th graders and 8th graders up there. And as far as what you need for classrooms to build up there is like 15 classrooms. Then you have to also figure out, as far as usage of the gym, play fields, there's no possible way the middle school is playing at the high school because there's not enough time or fields available. So,
In middle school, would probably have approximately 700 kids
yeah,
at that, and it's not suitable for 700 kids at the moment.
right, so you'd build there. So, yeah, would it possibly be cheaper, as far as those 2 projects compared to building a brand-new school? Possibly, but you're not gonna get the environment you're looking for as far as educational wise. You're also now gonna go preschool to 6th grade at LMS. And then you still have the problem, that road. You can't get down that road with 2 different vehicles, especially when they have any type of event, they're parked on both sides of the road. There's not enough parking there. You'd also have to build a playground up there, because you need a playground for that age group. And, basically that's what, and then they also talked about possibly just building a smaller school over here. But again, you run the same problem. You can go preschool at 2, but then you'd also be then bringing 3 and 4 to the LMS, then you'd be moving 7, 8 up. So there's a lot of impact as far as what consolidating, and I don't think, again, you don't have the numbers, so you can't say you're gonna save a lot of money, or it's gonna, cost roughly the same price. But the facilities committee voted last evening as far as to recommend, they recommend the new school across the street as was planned.
So that was option
5.
5.
We're gonna be discussing this for the next
Without
15
But
years.
you made the recommendation without knowing
Without
what the
numbers?
cost was of the other options?
It's just a recommendation. Yeah, it can change, I mean, it
So
can
the
change.
vote
If
of the
we-
voters this past year
It's pretty typical.
didn't indicate that maybe we need more options on the table?
So you get 9 now.
So
So-
when were they expecting the numbers for those projects?
Cart before the horse.
I don't know when exactly. I believe the idea is that, is it Kyle? Is that his name? Barker Architects will come to a upcoming school board meeting, I believe in June, and present the options to the board. I do anticipate numbers at that meeting, I would hope. And then the idea is that we're starting to formulate a presentation for likely a community forum, probably in September, right? Nobody's gonna go during the summer.
No, I think that's what you need. Because I have heard a lot from the school board, oh, 7th and 8th at the high school. Well, I grew up in a 7th through 12th grade school. I grew up pre-K to 6, so to me, that's not an issue. So I think you're gonna find.
To you, it's, right, I'll just
So
answer
there's
that. To
a
you,
lot of
it's not.
experiential things, and I've
Telling
heard,
it, Carrie.
so I'm just saying, what, dude? My, pretty freaking awesome, so I think I just sell it well.
And
But-
if you're accustomed to that, then it's one thing,
But
but
I
it's like
think-
throwing someone into that is totally
Well,
different.
I think in talking to people in town, that with the change of demographics, you're seeing more people who are like, why aren't we doing this? So I think you're seeing a lot of people who are like, we've never done it this way, we can't possibly, but you're also seeing a lot of people come in and it's like, that's how it was when I was in school. Hey, I had split sessions over here and, because we didn't have enough space, so I can't believe this is an issue. So I think that you need to open it up to the community dialogue, because I think there's more opinions and thoughts out there than is currently contained within a group of 5 or 6.
So
Community forum.
I
It's a
would look
great
forward
opportunity
to a
for it.
community forum for that.
Yep, because
I
I,
think that's a good idea. And with the numbers, I don't think any input, any opinion can really be formed without
Yeah,
some hard numbers.
I think my 2 cents on that is I think after the school board sees the numbers and gets the presentation, and before they vote on it, there should likely be a community forum for additional feedback. We certainly can't tell them the format to do it, but I think that makes logical sense.
There's been conversation about that too, that they plan to have
Not-
several.
I think it's good, because I honestly think that the vote this past year was indicative of people want more options, and they don't want, they see the cost, and quite frankly, I agree, that's an awesome spot for a new building. It's too bad we sunk 10 to 12 million into LMS. We should have done that first. But we are where we are, so how do we fix that?
I don't think we'll
7
sunk
million.
20 million into LMS.
7 million.
Plus
7 million.
all the other stuff you did beforehand, the ESSER funds and all the other mechanical work. There's been a ton of money invested into that building. So now you're asking people to say,
You're making that comment like it's the lease payment, so.
well, I'm saying all of the investments in LMS in the last several years are more than $7 million.
That is
And-
true, if you're adding the windows and the doors and.
And if I were going to build a new building, would I have made
The
those
roof.
investments? No. So, had we had a good long-term plan, had we actually put this on the planning committee and said, hey, I like this spot, I don't think we would have had all these investments over here, because we would have been focused on that. But that's not, we went out of
Still would have
order.
to take care of LMS, Carrie.
I'm just saying, you guys.
Build a
put-
new school, you still have to take care of your existing buildings.
I think this is a better conversation for that
Consolidate over
community
there.
You
forum.
need to go to the meetings.
I can't
Go
at 3:00.
Go to the planning board and take care of that end, and then go to like these other ones.
Schedule them at a time when people can actually attend them, and maybe I will.
So I think we can all look forward to the community forums. Any other committees for anyone to report out on? I think that was it. Right, as far as member input, I had one question for the committee, about if anyone would be interested in touring facilities and buildings in town. We had done, I think, the police station a few years ago.
Thing for a while.
That's what I'm wondering if there was interest in putting
We got
that
a couple years
request
It was a couple years,
to,
yeah.
the
think
Board of
that'd be
Selectmen and the school board.
Good idea to get a
tour.
refresh.
I've seen them all.
Police, fire.
Well, it's like I'm
Library.
familiar with some of the buildings,
Right.
but it's
I
usually
think
my
you'll-
husband that goes to
yeah.
the dump, so I don't know what's over there.
I think you'll find that they'll be more than happy to have people come tour their facilities, so it doesn't hurt to set it up. Say, hey, this week we're gonna go here. If you're available, come visit. Awesome. But some people.
I think it's a good idea on the town side, library, police, fire. I think that's a great idea. I'm sure Mr. Leary and Ms. Kleiner can help set that up.
It might even trigger some ideas as they go towards the capital improvement plan. Hey, you know what? Maybe we should take a look at that.
So if you wouldn't mind asking
Yep.
Ms. Kleiner.
Do that. I think last time we hit like 3 in a night, and then
Yeah.
the rest of them the other night. It took 2 nights.
And I would think it would be up to, departments how best to run it. I think
Yep.
we're pretty flexible with that. That was all that I had. Anything else for member input? Nope. Okay. So I think we can open up our second public input, and there's still no one here. So I'm gonna close public input. And that's all we have on our agenda, so I will.
Motion to
entertain
adjourn.
a motion to adjourn. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Cutter.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Mr. Bork.
Yes.
Mr. Sun.
Yes.
We are, oh my God, motion to adjourn passes 9-0-0. We are now adjourned. Thank you for tuning in and have a good night. And we hope to see you at Old Town Hall for the Memorial Day Parade on Monday.
And thank you, Kate, for facilitating.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Sorry it wasn't a
Okay.
record.